Hello, I think we're live. It's Alex and Naomi here. Perhaps someone could let us know if you can see us and hear us.
With the infant feeding team at the John Radcliffe in Oxford, and today we are in the Spires. So we are in one of the birthing rooms in the Spires. So we're giving you a little variety every week as to where we're videoing, so that you get a little insight into all the different rooms.
Yeah, we can see a birthing pool behind us. Naomi moves a tiny bit. There's a birthing pool. So it's one of their lovely light and airy rooms up on the Spires. Beautiful place to have your baby. I can see the numbers rising. We're up to 11. Welcome.
And as usual, we'll probably talk for about 30 to 45 minutes, depending on how many questions we get. And please send us lots of silly questions and you know, little questions and big questions, and any problems that you're worrying about, that anything that's happened to you this week that you want to share, anything positive, anything negative, you know, we can support you and hopefully get you through some tricky bits, but also teach you a little bit more about breastfeeding for your experience when you have your baby or while you're pregnant, and if you're concerned about anything.
So this week on Tuesday it was I have to read it so I get it right. World Day of Human Milk Donation. So it was to do with all the milk banks around the world. And actually we're really lucky here in Oxfordshire because we've had one of the most long-standing. Thank you, Sophie. Nice to see you again. She's just said she can hear us.
Brilliant.
So as I was saying, it was the World Day of Human Milk Donation on Tuesday, and we've had one of the most long-standing milk banks in the country. It was set up originally by Sally Inch many years ago, and is now run by Amanda Wood. And it's a fantastic resource. Loads of our local mums donate. Even my sister donated after both of her two children. And it benefits all the babies on the neonatal unit and many of our babies on the postnatal unit who need it. We do it on a traffic light system. As Amanda set it all up, we follow NICE guidance. And the milk is made available to those babies that need it, and it enables us to have babies kept human milk exclusive. It's fantastic. So if you're out there and you're pumping and you've got more than you need, consider donating. They would be more than delighted to have it.
Minimum 6 bottles, and I think it's up to a year, isn't it?
Yeah,
They'll accept human milk now.
Just, I think we mentioned it last time we were on. You just need to fill in some forms that are found online on the website, on the OUH website under Milk Bank, and have another blood test. It's just the same blood test that you would have had when you first became pregnant, checking all the same things, and it's rigorously tested and very safe. So it helps our babies stay human milk exclusive. So it's a big celebration out to our milk bank here for the World Day of Human Milk Donation.
And actually there aren't many hospitals, if any other hospitals in the country, that will offer donor breast milk to babies on the postnatal ward as a first choice. Many babies get donor breast milk in the neonatal unit, and that's primarily where it's for, and it dips in and out of the availability depending on the number of donors we get. But actually, for mums on the ward to be given as much as they want while they're in hospital to protect that exclusivity, as Alex has said, is quite unique, and we consider ourselves extremely lucky in Oxfordshire that we can offer that as the norm in the wards, in the postnatal wards. When you think we've got 43 beds on level 5 of mothers and babies, that we can provide that for them nearly always to help babies that aren't quite there, and we can tide it over until you get your milk supply up. And if you've had to come back into hospital and you're exclusively feeding and you haven't given your baby any formula at all, we would offer that as the first choice, if that's what you wanted as a family, to have donor breast milk to support you making your own milk until you go home.
As long as we're on green, as we said, it's a traffic light system, so as long as we're on green. And we've got our first question up, and it's Sophie Jameson, is part of the Abingdon Baby Cafe. She's an NCT breastfeeding counsellor, so we met on Zoom the other day after many years. And she's asking what, if you've got a baby in the community with a suspected tongue tie, what is the assessment pathway currently? Well, it would be a case of if you're fairly sure it's a tongue tie that needs to be done, then ENT are taking referrals. If that baby does need to be seen by someone, we are doing in extremis cases, we're seeing babies here in the hospital. But if you're pretty sure that's what that baby needs, then ENT will see that baby. So you can contact us and we can give you the ENT referral details if necessary. Anything to add on that? Because you've been in touch with them more recently than I have.
They are triaging, so it's not necessarily that you will get an appointment if they don't feel that it's urgent. So because obviously it's got the aerosol spray effect with babies, you're putting your finger in their mouth and it's touching, so they've got to just be very careful about accepting cases. So they're very limited to the numbers they will do, but what they will ask you to do is they'll triage you on the phone and ask you to send a photograph of your baby's tongue so that they can look at it as well. And then they'll interview you on the phone, have a chat with you, not interview, they'll have a chat with you on the phone and take a history of what's happening, and they'll decide whether it's appropriate for them to see you or not.
Okay. Amy Cantwell's popped a message up. She's saying she's 21 weeks now and she's got a lot of ankle swelling lately, and you were wondering what was the best way to deal with that. And being on your feet can make it worse, but I also want to make sure I'm doing enough walking, etc., for exercise safely.
It's very hot too, isn't it?
Yeah, we're more prone to being a bit swollen in the heat as it is.
I think also you need to have a conversation with your community midwife and just make sure that everything else is okay. She may want to ask you a few questions, and she'll also know your personal history, so she'll be able to advise as to whether she should see you or not. I think that it is the time of year when people do start to get puffy ankles when it's very warm, and it's whether it's just the heat or whether it is a little bit more and you're developing blood pressure problems or you've got some protein in your urine. It's really a good idea to phone your community midwife and have a conversation with them and see if they can arrange to do a check on you as an extra if they feel that that's necessary.
And just to remind you that there is the new service available, the Call the Midwife service, that we've got a team of midwives here answering calls. If you go on the website, I'm sure you'll find the details of it. I'm afraid I wasn't clever enough to bring the number with me, but we have got a team of midwives answering calls. Anything that you have to ask, regardless of what it's about, they're here working from 11 till 7 every day answering the calls.
We'll put it on the bottom. We'll add it to our list of details at the end of this session. We'll put it on the messages at the end of the session so you can see it.
Hi to Jane. Jane from the OBS has said hello. Lovely to see you, Jane. Nice to see you too. And carry on doing that fab job you're all doing. Anybody who's out there needing support, Jane and her team are doing an amazing job online offering support, as is Sue from the Abingdon Baby Cafe, and we're now set up for Attend Anywhere as well. So there's lots of support out there. Don't struggle on your own. Get the help. Give us a call. Give them a call. Annalise Walton has said, any tips on how to bring on labour? She's due tomorrow. Well, I'm going to say hand expressing. I mean, that's what the first thing we'd say as infant feeding team. Have a go at hand expressing. Get a spoon out. Have a go. There's some fantastic videos online. A lovely one is Global Health. If you go to Global Health videos and look at their section for mums, there's some beautiful videos on there. Shows what babies do naturally when they're born, but there's also a hand expressing video. So if you go and have a go at hand expressing, it might increase the oxytocin coursing around your body and encourage your Naomi's going to do a demonstration, and encourage your body to go into labour. So
if you can see me, if that's clear, I'm a little bit further away from Alex because we're socially distancing, so we don't want to be too close. So let me just see if I'm too high. So prepare your breasts, just do a little bit of massage and soften the tissues of your breast. And then take your fingers to the base of your nipple and go back about 2 to 3 centimetres. And then just push back slightly, and then bring your fingers together and hold for about 3 or 4 seconds, and then release. And then push back and hold and release. Push back, and that's all in the same place, and release. And then you can move around your breast like a clock face, and it will go all the way around, and you can move your hands all the way around. You can use 2 hands if you want to, if you're finding that a little bit easier. And then you start to see little tiny glistening bits at the end of your nipple, and that's your colostrum. Some people don't have very much in the antenatal period. Some people can get loads and loads out, and some people leak from 16 weeks, some people never leak. All of that is normal, absolutely normal. And don't panic if you don't get it, but obviously we're talking about stimulation for labour. It's releasing the hormones which will stimulate your a little bit of uterine activity. So, which is why we don't recommend you do it before 37 weeks actively, because we don't want people to have go into labour before they're due. If you're ready to go and you're over 37 weeks, it will tip you in the right direction more often than not. But it won't start labour if you're not ready to start labour. It might when you're over, when you're over your dates and you're nearly due. It might just tip it the right way if you're ripe and ready to go. So you can go to both sides. So you do it on that side, and then you go back to that side, and then you can go back to that side and do another one on that side. And you can collect it on a teaspoon, put it into an ice cube tray, or you can put it into syringes that you can get from your midwives. Or doctor's surgery. Not all doctor's surgeries are available.
What about a clean Tupperware pot or something? A small, the small ones, just something to store it in.
And you can freeze it then. So you can go on the side for 24 hours, out on the side of in the room temperature, or it can go in the fridge for 5 days, or you can put it in the freezer for 6 months. So and we'll remind you again, if you are doing that, just to bring a very small amount of the express colostrum with you, maybe just 1 or 2 syringes with you when you come in, and put it in a little cool bag with some ice blocks. Bring it with you. We don't have many freezer options for mothers to put their milk into, and some of it has got mislaid in the past, so we don't want you to lose all that wonderful colostrum that you've spent hours and hours getting. For it to go missing, or for it to defrost and be unusable. So what can happen is that your partner will have to bring it into the hospital and meet and greet at their door to bring some more in at the moment if you have got a stash of it, but we don't want you to bring in loads, or wait till you get home and use it if you're managing to get milk for colostrum for your baby in the early days. So have a practice. Ask if you've got a midwife appointment. If you've come up for a midwife appointment soon, just as you're due, ask her to go through it with you if you're not quite sure. But be experimental. You're not going to do any harm, and you might want to do it in the shower or the bath, because that's a bit more private, and you just might not be, feel that you're making so much sticky. It's a bit sticky, but have a go. It might tip you in the right direction. I hope that's helped you.
So, online resources for that as well. We talked about the video, but there's also Off to the Best Start, which is a PHE leaflet that we hand out once you've had your baby, and it's available on the UNICEF Baby Friendly website, or if you just put Off to the Best Start, you'll be able to find it online. And it does have a whole section about hand expressing, goes through exactly what Naomi's just talked about. So I hope that helps, Annalise. Just a suggestion. It would be always our suggestion, because that's our way of looking at things anyway. Chris has said, thank you so much for doing these videos. We're due on the 10th of June, and naturally I'm concerned about the COVID situation at JR. Are you able to offer me some reassurance that the maternity ward, I've got to put Seymour, is safely separated from the COVID activities? Thank you. Absolutely. Completely different, separated areas. Everybody's triaged as they're coming in. Everybody is triaged as they come in, literally. And they will go to one area if there are no symptoms and no likelihood, and if there are any symptoms or any likelihood, they're in another area. Totally different. And there's no crossover at all.
And you'll be swabbed.
Yeah, everyone is being tested on arrival. Everyone. So and you'll have all the normal testing as well, temperature, etc. So yeah, everyone is being checked as they come in. So we're minimising the risk big time. So okay, I hope that I've reassured you there, Chris. Charlotte has said, hi, I seem to have a very healthy colostrum supply. Well done. She's currently 35 plus 6, and she managed to express 4 syringes worth this morning. Yay. How much should I be harvesting? As much as possible. I'm dating and freezing. Brilliant. As I go. Well, we mentioned milk banking. They'll take colostrum as well. So just date it and everything. And if you don't need it, or we would normally suggest try 4 times a day, and that's usually about enough. Babies, the colostral phase is only really the first 3 or 4 days, because the mature milk comes in between days 3 and 5. So from that point of view, think about maybe just expressing 4 times a day would be fine. Any excess that you have that you don't use, maybe your baby comes, you don't actually need it, then you could think about offering it to the milk bank, and they do take colostrum as well. So that would be very fabulous and really, well used, because we get a lot less colostrum than we do mature milk, and that's lovely to be able to pair up the colostrum with a baby that actually should be getting colostrum as opposed to mature milk. So keep going, maybe just do 4 times a day, and that would probably be plenty, and keep going. It's fantastic. Well done you. So,
be proud.
Yeah, very. Sarah Theobald said, hi, I was having Braxton Hicks on the hour, nearly every hour. Then they started to go every 45 minutes or so, lasting for about 45 seconds. I'm now 39 weeks. Is this just my little man getting my, on the Seymour bet again, sorry folks, getting my hopes up on his arrival, and is your body getting ready? Yes.
I think he's trying to worm his way down, and his head is trying to get a little bit further down, and it does cause a little bit of stimulation for Braxton Hicks to get a little bit more excited, but often they're just winding their way into your pelvis a bit lower. You might feel that he's a bit lower now that you've done that, or the midwife, if she sees you, might say, oh, he's gone down a little bit more. Keep an eye on the movements, count the kicks, and if anything's concerning you, then talk to somebody. But babies do this, and I don't know if it's your first baby or whatever. Some babies, particularly second, third babies, can be a little bit more irritable. You can sometimes get a little bit more Braxton Hicks than with your first, but it's more likely that your baby's head is descending a little bit and getting ready to go into labour. So it all sounds absolutely brilliant. But if you have any concerns, ring someone and talk to them, preferably your midwife.
Yeah. or into this team, and we've got the team here doing it.
Yes.
Hello, Sharon.
Hello, Sharon. Also our #1 fan. I forgot to say that last week.
Yeah, fantastic. She's superb.
Thank you for supporting us.
Sharon is one of our team out in the community, working in Chippy Norton, and she's fantastic. Fabulous support. So lucky mummies that get her for helping, but we've got great staff anyway. Andrea has asked, I was very lucky to have donated breast milk when I had my baby in hospital. I appreciate it so much, and still working hard to be able to breastfeed now at home. My baby is premature, so it's a slow road. Yeah, slow road, pumping away, and that's what baby has. My question is advice on nipple shields, as my baby doesn't deep latch yet. Will the nipple shield help? I'm worried it will reduce my milk supply. Do you want to ask that one?
So you don't talk about how much milk you've got. Do you have lots of milk? I think the concern with nipple shields, there's a couple really. I mean, they are very appropriate if they're needed, but there are some concerns with them. One is that babies love them once they get them, and then mums get really fed up of them and their babies won't drop them. And the other one is that your baby may get slightly less, particularly if they're not on really deeply. If they have had lots of bottles, they may then see the nipple shield as a bit like a bottle teat and just suck the end. And what you've got to do is work with the attachment to get a really big latch in order to get that baby deeply onto the breast so that it can move its jaw on the breast so that it's milking the breast. And if you see where my thumb is, it's right underneath. And if you get the nipple shield on and the baby's here, it's not going to make the next feed. So if you've got an oversupply, your baby will probably manage to get enough off until it gets used to feeding with them. But the risk is that if you're not, if you haven't got a really good latch, then it may not get as much feed through the nipple shield, and you've got to watch that your baby's weight is sufficient when they're on them. They do support mums, particularly if they're going back, if their babies have been a little bit sleepy in the first days and babies haven't fed well, and they've had lots and lots of bottles. Sometimes it's a step back onto the breast, and it builds the baby's confidence up being near the breast again, and the plastic is the driver, as the teat is the driver. The plastic nipple shield is the driver for the baby to open its mouth and gape, because that's what it recognises, not the breast. And so it's a stepping stone back onto breastfeeding for some babies that have had lots and lots of bottles. They're to be used with caution, and really we don't recommend that you use them at all if you haven't got a good supply, or if your mature milk hasn't arrived. So if you're still in the colostral phase, you're still in the early days of breastfeeding, your baby probably won't get very much through the nipple shield, so it'll get much less calories than if it was on the breast properly and feeding properly. I think the key is, why do you want to use them, and can you get support to get better positioning and attachment so that you don't need to use them. It won't improve the deeper latch, which is what you talked about, trying to teach your baby to get a deeper latch. You might find, you haven't said how old your baby is, I don't think, have you?
I don't remember.
You might find that leaning backwards, so putting your baby onto the breast and then leaning back about 45 degrees might help your baby get a slightly deeper latch when your baby's on, so that gravity is holding your baby a bit deeper. The other thing you could try, and it takes a little bit of dexterity, but you could just try pulling your baby's chin down when it's on the breast. And just put your finger across the chin and pull its chin down very slightly while it's breastfeeding, and that sometimes just opens the gape a little bit more and encourages the baby to take a bit more in its mouth. So you could try that when you're feeding. Some babies say, don't do that to me again, I don't like that, and other babies won't care, and they'll accept it. So you don't know until you try, but very gently, it's not a deliberate pull, it's just a tweak, and it just sometimes just opens the gape slightly without taking your baby off the breast, so they don't get cross because they haven't lost their food source. But it also allows that jaw to open very slightly while they're in the middle of a suck, and it can deepen the latch a little bit. So it's a little tip from us that you could try that and see if it improves the attachment a little bit. And what will happen if that is there is you might be a little bit more comfortable, but also you'll see the sucking pattern change. So it might go from much faster sucks to a deep glugging suck when you see suddenly they're a little bit deeper and you've really hit the suck reflex at the back of the roof of the mouth that encourages babies to really glug at the breast. So have a try, see if that helps, and feed back to us if you've had good results from that.
I think the only thing to add about nipple shields is that I think they're originally marketed as something when people were sore, and actually that's not what we use them for. If you are sore, if you're struggling with with pain and damaged nipples, then actually it's going to be much more likely to be positioning and attachment, and all you're doing is putting a sticking plaster on it. So actually you need to get the positioning and attachment sorted, and I've already mentioned that we've got OBS, wonderful people at Oxfordshire Breastfeeding Support Group, we've got Abingdon Baby Cafe and us, all able to do online, and we can do positioning and attachment support on those. So that's the first thing to say about it, because that's how they were marketed originally, was to deal with people who were sore. We don't use them for that. We tend to use them for the babies that as Naomi said, they're triggered by plastic now because they maybe have had a bottle or two. They've never had a chance to go to the breast. Those babies that we're transitioning back will be when we might use a nipple shield, rather than to deal with a baby that is making a mummy sore. Because if she's making her sore, we're just putting a sticking plaster on the problem, and actually we need to look at the positioning and attachment. So seek help for that. Amy came back and said thank you. Marie Joy has come with saying antenatal classes have been cancelled, and are there any videos we can recommend? You've watched one about baby care, but feel there's always the Seymour bit, very uninformed about giving birth. There are NCT online classes which you would have to pay for in the same way as NCT normally, but they're done on Zoom. Sophie Jameson, who's commented earlier, is an NCT teacher, and so I know she's facilitating classes locally. So there are classes around, and I did have a look the other day, and there were some spaces still. So I'm not sure when your baby's due, Marie, but you can do that so, as you would if you'd gone to a normal NCT class, but you do it on Zoom instead. The Association of Breastfeeding Mothers are doing a great online course, but that's self-guided, that one. I think some of these are really good. You use the services we've got here too. We've got this system where you can phone in between 11 and 7, just call the midwife, and they'll be happy to answer any of your questions, and I'm sure they'll have time for a chat about what your concerns are, give you some information. I think there's nothing more than they'd love to talk you through what's going on and give you the support that you need. So NCT, Association of Breastfeeding Mothers, and try the telephone helpline we've got here in the hospital and see how you get on with that. Access all the support that we're offering you. I hope that helps. Joanna Mason has said, how often should you feed your newborn baby? Some advice has said try and feed every hour initially to keep up your milk supply, but then other advice has been saying you could feed as little as every 4 hours of the baby if the baby isn't asking for food. Any advice would be gratefully appreciated. So babies are a bit like us. They don't always want to feed at regular intervals. We anticipate that a baby that is full term of a good weight with no risk factors may only feed 3 times in the first 24 hours. It's never had a concept of being hungry before this, but that ramps up. So although the baby may only feed 3 times in the first 24 hours, you can anticipate that in the second 24 hours that's really going to go up. And the second night, even though if you've had a lovely quiet first night, the likelihood is your baby will feed and feed and feed. And
that's horns at 8 o'clock.
Literally. And that is what they are going to drive your milk supply. That's absolutely pushing the milk supply on that, usually on that second night. And this is when parents feel that they haven't got enough milk. You do. Your baby is putting the order in. This is requesting your milk supply. And we expect a baby to feed after the first 24 hours somewhere between 8 and 13 times in a 24-hour period at frequent but not regular intervals. If you think about your own day, so you might get up and have a cup of tea, have a long break, then you have your big breakfast, then you might have a couple of drinks, you might have a little cake, then you might have a lunch, and you think about everything you put in your mouth in a day. That's the same with a baby. And they're not just feeding for food, they're feeding for comfort. They've come into this new world, they've got no idea what's going on, and you are their link to this new world. And they've gone from being in your tummy, and they expect to be here. And they expect to be cuddled, they expect to be loved, and you cannot spoil them, and you cannot feed them too much. There's a fabulous quote on the UNICEF BFI website that says, I feed for comfort, and the nutrition sorts itself out. So just follow your baby. We talk about responsive feeding. So if your baby's looking for food, and that's if you're waiting for crying, that's a bit late. We're talking about babies that will be looking around, licking, sticking their tongue out, wriggling. Those are all signs that your baby's ready for food. Catch them then, feed them then, and then your milk supply will be established and your baby will feed brilliantly, and it'll all just sort itself out.
I think the thing is that the first thing that you're doing is that first feed on the labour ward. That's really important in the first hour, because that is your prime. And we know that when we see babies on day 2, day 1, day 2, on the postnatal ward, or when they come back in, if they've had problems, that they always say they've got more milk on one side than the other, and it's normally always the breast that they had that first feed on in the labour ward that produces the most milk. So that early significant feed, that early skin to skin, is the thing that drives the initial milk supply and starts that process off. The other thing is that if you've had a long labour, if it's been a medicalised labour, if you've had pain relief, that's an epidural, or you've had an injection, or much more interventionist labour, a caesarean for instance, you will you and your baby will be sleepy, and some of the medication will affect your baby for the first sort of 24 hours. He or she will be a little bit sleepy, and that means that they won't wake up for feeds as frequently as some babies maybe that have had not so much pain relief or not such a long labour. Just like you will be tired if you've had a really long labour compared to somebody who's had a much quicker labour. They haven't been working quite so long and missing out on calories and all of those things when they're in labour. So you will find that the impact is for both of you that you will want to sleep. And so yes, your baby feeding 3 times in the first 24 hours is perfectly normal and absolutely fine, providing your baby's had a really good amount of colostrum, or just little bits of colostrum in the early hour, in that first hour, and they've had a good feed. You can be reassured that your baby's got that imprint on that first feed, and then it's primed the breasts to start, and it's had some colostrum. So you know that you can leave your baby for a little bit longer, and it's going to be burning fat, which is that the baby has on its body. If it's a normal healthy term baby, it'll be nice and chubby, it'll have supplies of fat on it. So if the baby's not getting colostrum, they've got that initial kick of colostrum, and then they get this counter-regulation where they can burn between the calories that you give them, or they can burn the fat that they've got around them as their reserves. And so if your baby's not waking up to feed because it's exhausted, they're burning fat and they're getting their brains fed, and their blood sugar levels are being stable. But what you can do if you're worried is if your baby isn't waking for feeds, you can do hand expression. And so we've talked about how to do that. So after 3 hours, if your baby, you're feeling okay and you feel that your baby has only had one feed and you want to start the process, then start hand expressing. And you can do that as much as you want. You might want to do it every hour for 3 hours and then have a little break and a sleep. And then if your baby's not interested in feeding, you can give that colostrum that you've expressed to your baby so you're not worried. He may still be sleepy, but you can put those tiny little amounts into the side of his mouth with a syringe, and that will coat round his mucous membrane surfaces, and he will swallow very, very small amounts, so he's not going to choke on those. It's just tiny little volumes. You don't put mature milk in the baby's mouth or formula in a syringe. You would put just colostrum, and that will coat his mouth. And then you can do it again, and you keep doing it, and you keep doing it, and you keep doing it. So if you're worried that your baby isn't feeding, what you're doing is giving him calories all the time. But not only that, you're priming your prolactin receptors in your breasts to set up for calibrating for your milk supply. And you will be securing that milk supply for when your baby really needs it. So when he grows horns and wakes up at night, you are going to have that milk there quickly and early, and that we know that you've got this little window of about 3 to 10 days, 3 to 14 days, where your receptors are open. It's like plugging a plug-in, and you're plugging those receptors in and saying, start using me, start working, start priming me, and you work around all your breasts, and if your baby's feeding, they will stimulate your breasts appropriately, but if you're not, then you're doing hand expressing, doing that stimulation. And those those receptors will shut. Yeah. And if you haven't primed them, we don't know whether you've got 3 days or whether you've got 2 weeks. Some mums have got less time, some mums have got more. But if you haven't done that and you decide that you want to do more after that time, you will struggle to make a full supply. Some mums will and some mums won't. But we see many mothers that don't quite make enough milk, and it may be that they didn't realise in the first 2 or 3 days that they had to do all that stimulation early on to secure their milk supply for later. And we see many tears as a result of that, and many mothers feel that they haven't done very well because they didn't do that early feeding. So if we tell you that before you have your baby, then you know that you've got to set that up, and you've got to set that process up to start producing lots and lots of milk. And we know now in this COVID-19 pandemic that mothers are making more milk because they are cuddling their babies more, they are doing more skin to skin, they are doing more suckling of their babies, they are feeding their babies more frequently because they've got no visitors and they're not going anywhere. So the impact has been that we have seen mothers make a better supply because they are actually cuddling their babies more. And that is very significant. It's not researched yet, but I think that it will come out that we have found that throughout the country, that midwives and lactation consultants are reporting back that mothers have got a better milk supply as a result of more hands-on with their baby, more skin to skin, more focusing on that feeding. So there are positives, but it's so important that you recognise those early feeds to get that hand expressing if your baby is not feeding well, to really prime those receptors even if your baby is sleepy, because you can always give them food. You can just always reward them. And I do say they're a bit like puppies. They need biscuits. They have to have little biscuits. So that that's their biscuit. The colostrum is your baby's puppy's biscuits.
So just going back to one thing you said, Joanna, you talked about timings, and just to say, if you think about when you do eat in a day, we don't eat to timings as such. So think, and you will hear it. You hear it all the time. Does your baby feed 3 hourly? Does your baby feed 4 hourly? The only time we put a time scale on it, because we let the baby to tell us when they want to be fed, the only time we do that is if we've got a concern. So if we've got a baby that is not waking for feeds, that is maybe jaundice, that is maybe not maintaining its blood sugars because maybe mummy is a diabetic, has diabetes, those are the sort of times that we will say, okay, you need to be feeding this baby a minimum of every 3 hours. But the majority of the time we tend to go with the baby and let the baby tell us, and most babies will then do 8 to 13 feeds in a 24-hour period, and that's what will happen. So we tend to do responsive feeding, letting the baby telling us when they're hungry. But you also have the right to feed your baby. Responsive is two-way. So if you're sitting there thinking, I am so full, I don't know what to do with myself, you can pick your baby up and offer them a feed, and most babies will not say no. So they'll be delighted to be given an additional feed.
So we say as midwives 8 times in 24 hours, a lot. We never say 3 hourly.
Okay.
And people work it out that, oh, well, that's 8 times in 24 hours, that's every 3 hours, that's what we do. But we never ever say that. So 8 times in 24 hours is the minimum. It might be 12 or 14 times in 24 hours. And that might be feeding hourly for 3 or 4 hours, and then it might have a little break and a sleep, and then it will catch up, and they will always chase it. So if they've had a longer sleep, they will feed hourly for 2 or 3 hours to catch up, because they have got to get the calories in. So you know, if you have a baby that sleeps a bit more at night, you've got to get the calories in the day, otherwise your baby's weight will drop. It's not okay to feed your baby 6 times in 24 hours and it's not gaining weight. If it's gaining weight and you can't wake your baby up anymore, then, you know, obviously we wouldn't say, oh, you've got to wake your baby up more frequently and give egg, but it's very unusual for a breastfed baby to feed that infrequently. It's more usual for it to feed at least 12 times in 24 hours. So, but we never say 3 hourly, it's always 8 times in 24 hours, and that's very different language to the decisions that people come to, and the fact that we do it 3 hourly. And it's the same with pumping, we say surprise your breasts, not every 3 hours. So, it's important that you hear that and understand that your baby will lead with the feeding.
Raluca and Cheryl have both asked a question, one after the other, that I actually don't know the answer to. I think it's no, but they're both asking, are the birth partners being tested as they come in? Now, I know it's the women are being tested. I have to say, we'll get back to you on that one. I don't know, have you read anything? I'm thinking it's just the women. So not sure on that one, you two. I'm very sorry not to be able to give you an answer straight away, but we will check. But I think it is just the women.
Well, when you are in labour, we have all got protective clothing on, and when you become further into your labour, we wear much more protective clothing. So as you're in early labour and we're sort of more distant, and we're not, there's not sort of risk of aerosol spray, so we are still practicing very strict protective guidelines, and it becomes more protective as you go further into your labour. So we are protecting ourselves as well if we don't know your partner's status, but we'll find out.
Sarah has come back, Sarah Theobald, she had put a question up earlier. She said he's definitely gone down and moving well. This is my 3rd baby and never had this before, thank you.
Definitely 3rd baby. They bounce in and out. And he may come out again and then go back in.
Oh yes.
Yeah, they like to play with you. So
yeah,
I didn't say is it your 3rd baby, but I thought it.
Yes, I can speak from experience on that one. Chris has come back saying, thank you so much for the reassuring answer re COVID situation earlier. You mentioned that everyone is tested to entry on the hospital, thus does include the birth partners. Again, I'm really sorry, I think it is just the mothers, but we will check and we'll get it put out. Are we tested on departure too? No, it's just on arrival. It takes 48 hours or so for the results to come through. If they're not, if you're still here, you'll get told here. If you're not, you get told by community midwife what the result is. So, and most of us will be tested as well. So thanks from Sharon. Jade has said, I'm 37 plus 6 and I've only managed 0.5 mils of colostrum.
Wow.
Only. That's fantastic.
That's low.
Into syringe this morning. Should I be worried? No, you should be delighted that this isn't enough. And am I allowed to express some in the morning in one syringe and then add the same syringe later on when I try again, or should it be a new one? No. Use the same one all day. Yeah, you know, you could use it. I mean, if you could fill it 1 in a day, that would be fine. If you're going to fill 2 in a day, that's fine too. Anything you get is a bonus. So no, I think that's fantastic.
That's
loads. Yeah, we're going, woo! Well done, you.
What a skill.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And it's lovely if you can, although you don't need to know how to hand express before you have a baby, you don't need to be doing extra things before you have your baby. It is quite useful to know that skill. It's one thing you don't have to learn afterwards, and you can go, I know how to do this. So we can sign you off, because we sign you off in the postnatal care plan that you can do that, because it's your first aid when you go home, so it's fantastic. So yeah, use the same syringe throughout the day, or go on to another one if you filled it, but not a problem. We've got a top fan here. This is Gemma. She says top fan on there. My baby's 9 days old. She's been roughly feeding for every 3 hours on average, but the last 2 days she's feeding every 1.5. Yeah, that can be normal. I mean,
It's 28 degrees outside. I bet you drank a bit more.
yeah, that's a good question. That's a good point. And as long as everything else is normal, then yes. So she's pushing your supply, I should think. And what you're looking at is she pooing and weeing appropriately? So 9 days, we'd be expecting her to be doing at least 2 yellow stools, £2 coin size a day, and 6 heavy wet nappies. If she's not doing that, she might need more. We both got it. We both. Do you want to?
Great minds think alike.
Yeah.
Don't forget, you've got this lovely book on. It's back to front, obviously, but the one with the poo guide on that tells you about wees and poos. But also, if you are 9 days, you've probably still got your care plan. Have you got a copy of the care plan?
I didn't bring one up. I've got one in the book there.
And that's got the. Here we go. The 4 reliable signs of milk transfer, which we talk about every week. That's your suckling and swallowing, your weeing, and we talked about the number of wees that you do.
So that's your postnatal care
wet
plan.
nappies, and then weight. Those are your 4 reliable signs, and that's in here for you to look at. That's your 4 reliable signs of milk transfer. So you read that.
You'd be here.
And is your
Bottom
baby
page.
doing those things? Is your baby weeing enough? Is your baby pooing enough? And it'll tell you that. Is your baby suckling and swallowing at the breast? And then we know that the weight will probably be fine. And that's when you worry, is your baby getting enough milk? So in the hot weather, we drink more because we're thirsty. Babies drink more. Nearly 80% of your breast milk is water. So you don't need to give your baby anything extra in this hot weather to worry about that. You just need to get your baby to suckle more and to up your milk supply. So what you might find tomorrow is that your breasts feel a bit fuller because that your baby's been suckling more frequently. If you want to know if your baby is getting enough, because that is probably the $1,000,000 question in breastfeeding, most mothers worry about it, particularly if you've had a bit of a shaky start and you've been giving top-ups and things, your baby's been offered extra food while you're in hospital for any reason. You become very, very fixed on volumes, and it's really hard to break that as a parent. Babies don't seem to mind so much, but mothers and fathers do, and parents do. But you've got to go back to the 4 reliable signs. Listen to what your baby's doing, listen to that suckling and swallowing. Is your baby glugging at the breast? And then you look at what they're doing in their nappy. We've just talked about that again. Is that okay? Has it gone down? Are the nappies a bit drier? How much is in the nappy? We talked about this before on the other sessions, but put a couple of tablespoons of water in a nappy and feel how heavy it is, particularly if you think your baby's feeding more frequently and it doesn't seem to be settled. They're hot and bothered, just like you are. It was hot last night in bed, it was hot the night before in bed. Babies feel that just the same as you do. So check those 4 reliable signs. Well, certainly the first 3, because weight's more difficult to deal with at the moment. We're not weighing babies as frequently as we have. Might be a good idea, but babies aren't looking at, you're not looking at the weights all the time.
But you're day 9, so actually you're likely to be having a weight any day now with the midwife.
Tomorrow,
so
probably, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so for a little girl, we'd expect her to go up 20 grams a day until she's 4 months old, and for a little boy, about 30 grams. So between 20 and 30 grams a day for the first 4 months. We don't expect them to put on tons and tons and tons, so they shouldn't lose any weight after day 5. So that goes back to looking at what they're doing. Are they suckling enough? Are they swallowing? Do you feel the changes in your breast? Are you seeing wet and dirty nappies? And those will reassure you as parents. And we know that if babies aren't doing those things, they're probably going to be losing weight. So if your baby isn't doing those first 3 things, you need to be talking to somebody, asking for some support, getting somebody to check your feeding, if that's on Zoom, or if you're still under the care of the midwives, to ask them if you can have a check-up with feeding and try and time your appointment with a hungry baby so they can watch you feed when you come in to see us.
Okay, I hope that's reassuring, Gemma, and obviously, hopefully you'll be seeing the midwife imminently anyway, so 4 reliable signs, and then there will no doubt be a weight imminently, so hopefully that will reassure you. I've got Leah, she's another top fan, all the top fans on here. Do you have any advice for encouraging baby of 4 weeks old to successfully drink from the breast when she also uses the bottle? She'll occasionally drink well from the breast, but other times gets very frustrated and will shake her head from side to side and pull away after latching and having a few suckles. She's a combination of feeding and formula and EBM top-ups, and has only just yesterday reached her birth weight. We've only just been discharged from the midwives and have spoken to someone from your feeding team before about her feeding. Right.
So increasing your milk supply, I'm pretty certain that you will have gone through the pumping, lots and lots of pumping regime after feeds and doing all of those things. So I know that you'll be quite worn down by everything that you've done, and you know, you deserve a really big hug and a cuddle and a pat on the back with how far you've got and how well you've done. I'm sure we've talked about compression, and compression is when your baby is suckling, you squeeze your breast as it suckles. So as it suckles, you're squeezing, and when your baby stops suckling, you let go. And then when your baby starts to suckle again, you compress your breast. So it's not pumping, it's not the same as expressing, it's actually compressing. So you're holding and you're going as far back to your chest wall as you can, so that you're not interfering with the baby's mouth on the nipple. So get a really big handful. You might want to go like that, you might want to go like that, you might want to go like that, or you can go like that. It doesn't matter how you do it, however you can get hold of your breast and squeeze it, and that will push milk more into your baby's mouth. So as they start to pull, they're becoming flow driven, and so babies are always driven by the volume of milk that's going in, and if they've had a lot of bottles, they get very driven by the flow in the bottle, and it doesn't change. So it's the same flow from the start to the end of the bottle for a baby. And when they breastfeed, they get the flow initially, and then it slows down, and the volume in the breast gets less and less and less, and it drains the breast more effectively, but the volumes get less in their mouth, and they get cross because the flow is changing. So they start to pull at the breast and scratch a little bit and wiggle their hands when the flow changes. So then you'd start to do some compressions, and you'd offer that. If the flow then slowed again and your baby started to get cross, then you would offer a switch. And you'd do the same on that side. This might be a few minutes, it might be 10 minutes. Don't look at your clock, look at what your baby's doing, but it's not going to happen the same time and do the same thing. But so you're looking at what your baby's doing. As he starts to pull, you go back to that side, so you're having another letdown. You do the same again. And then when your baby starts to pull, you go back to that side and you start again, and then you go back to that side, and you go back to that side, and you go back to that side, and you go back to that side till you drain your breasts, and it becomes more and more frequent between the switches as the flow goes down. But your baby gets little mouthfuls all the time. It's always getting food, and it will also kickstart your supply a little bit, and it will increase your supply so that your baby gets used to the volumes a little bit. They sort of transition back onto the breast, and you might need to do that for 2 to 4 days in order to kickstart your supply a little bit more to help to build it up. And that might help your baby's flow confusion. It might help the fact that your baby is getting used to having a bottle. Hopefully you're doing responsive bottle feeding, so perhaps we'll show responsive bottle feeding, so that your baby's not getting a really fast flow of milk in the bottle as you're giving the baby a feed. So that Alex will show you, so that you can see how to hold the bottle and offer the baby it responsively.
It's having your baby in close, quite upright, having the bottle as horizontal as you can get it, ensuring that the teat that is in the baby's mouth is full. We don't need the whole teat full, especially if you're using something like an Avent or a Tommee Tippee teat, which are enormous. So what you're aiming for is that it sits there and the milk is sitting there waiting to be removed. If you tip a bottle up, it pours out, and the baby is struggling to continue to cope with the flow. If you bring it here, they can feed at their own pace, because it's called responsive or paced feeding, and they can remove the milk at their own speed. So the baby's in close, upright, brush down, tell the baby that they're going to be fed. That really helps with going from the breast to the bottle, because we always need, and the bottle to the breast, we always need a baby to open their mouth. We can't just poke the breast in. So get them to open their mouth, they go, "Nah," and you introduce the bottle, keeping it as horizontal as you can. As you get less and less milk in there, you'll have to go up, obviously. But it's trying to maintain that what's in the baby's mouth is full, but not worrying about the rest of the teat. This doesn't mean they take in more air. They don't take any more air in this way, but what they can do is they can stop and pause and rest and start again, which is what they do at the breast, and it's known as paced or responsive bottle feeding. But well done you. I mean, that's a long haul, 4 weeks. Well done, Leah.
If you want to ask us some more questions,
give us a shout.
Give us a ring, and we'll talk to you on the phone as well. We'd love to hear from you if we haven't answered everything for you.
Yeah. I had a scan at 37 plus 3, and a trip over my west. I was told my baby was 3.6 kilos. Does this suggest that by the time I go into labour, my baby would be considered to be big, and anything might change for us because of his size?
Well, scans are, they get less accurate in size as your baby gets a bit bigger. So, you know, it's not necessarily going to be that big. It might be a little bit less, it might be a little bit more. And I think that, you know, be reassured that your baby will be right for you, and that your baby's made to fit your body, and that the size they would, if they were concerned at all, they would then do, you know, further discuss things further with you. If they said everything was fine and it looks great, then I'm sure it is. But go back to your midwife and talk to her if you're concerned about it, and let her look at your scan, and she can discuss you as an individual case and look at what they've said. But, you know, scans aren't really accurate on size at 36 weeks, so it might be a little bit more or a little bit less. It's not accurate.
We look forward to meeting you, Aya.
You will make the baby the right size for you.
Francesca says, I had a baby 6 days ago. Congratulations. Thank you for these videos. I found them very helpful. She latched straight away and hardly lost any of her birth weight.
Oh,
I forgot. Wonderful. We love stories like that. Oh, so sorry, I'm pressing too many buttons. I forgot to ask my midwife about vitamin D. I've been taking daily vitamin D tablets as I'm meant to be giving some to her also. Yes, you are. The recommendation is that you do give her vitamin D droplets, so you can get them from pharmacy. If you are on benefits, then you get them that way too. So any baby that needs them will get them. It's not that our milk is deficient, it is that we as a cohort of people are deficient. We live in a northern hemisphere country, we don't get enough daylight, and we actually don't have enough for us and a baby. So the idea is that, yes, please give your baby, if your baby is fully breastfed, that your baby gets vitamin D supplements. If mothers are mixed feeding and the baby is getting more than 500 mils of formula, then there's enough added vitamin D in formula for that. They wouldn't need to add in vitamin D as well. But an exclusively breastfed baby, or a baby who's getting less than 500 mils of formula, does need to have vitamin D supplements. But as I say, it is not because our milk is deficient, it's because we as a nation are deficient. So yes, please supplement your baby. Joanna said thank you very much, and it was very helpful. Cheryl has read, how long will the baby feed on its first feed? If the baby falls asleep, should you still leave baby on the breast in case it wakes up and wants more? So longer skin to skin rather than putting it in the cot. And how long should you do skin to skin for after birth? Also, you said sometimes you have more milk in the breast you did the first feed on. Should you swap breasts?
Good question. If your baby will take it, you might, but hopefully you'll feed your baby for the next feed, or you'll do hand expressing on that side, so you stimulate both breasts, and it might be that the next feed you do hand expressing on an hour or two later, and then you've stimulated that. So yes, most women have more milk in one breast than the other because they have fed on that breast in the first hour, and that is significant, you know, to some mothers, not every mother. But it's anecdotal. You see that actually some mothers have got more, and they will say, I've got more in this side. They generally catch up eventually, but you know, giving your breast stimulation, if your baby's sleepy, you can do some hand expressing on the side that you haven't fed from, and that will start the process off on that breast as well. So yes, you know, stimulate the other side if you want to. The more stimulation you do, you can't do too much stimulation in the early days, you know. The more milk you'll get your milk in, and the more milk your baby will get, and you'll secure your baby with colostrum in the early days, which is really reassuring for you that you can do that. It's your emergency care. You know, hand expressing is your emergency care if your baby is sleepy or it won't attach easily, which sometimes they don't do after they've had their first feed. They become a little bit not that bothered. They get tummy full of yuck from the birth, and they often very sicky after about 12 hours when they've had your baby. So they start to be quite mucousy after 12 hours, and that might carry on for the day. And then they sort of have these horns that grow at night, and they feed all night, and that's pushing it through. And we talked a lot about the colostrum and pushing everything through the gut and passing meconium last week, so you might want to catch up with all that as well, and the benefits of the colostrum on the gut. on the session we did last Thursday. And that will start the process off. It will get everything going, and it will increase the baby's gut motility, so it will push all the meconium, but also the mucousy stuff in the baby's tummy from the birth out, so they're then ready to feed. They just feel a bit grotty if they've got a tummy full of mucus and stuff from the birth. They just don't often wake up and feel hungry because their tummy's quite full from all the birth that they've just taken in from the birth. So they are quite often mucousy, but remember that things like skin to skin and giving colostrum in the mouth will actually allow that, will enable that baby to stop being quite so sicky, and it will settle the tummy, and they will then feed. If your baby is in the cot next to you, it won't wake up, it won't have its cues met in the same way as if you hold your baby skin to skin. It's more likely to feed frequently if you have your baby close to you and it can smell you. And it's also got another effect, that it increases your hormone response and you start to make more milk. So if your baby's in the cot next to you, that won't happen in the same way.
So you asked about how long will the first feed be. Well, how long's a piece of string? So they don't tend to be particularly long feeds, the first ones are not hugely long. Much as Naomi's already said, you're tired, baby's tired. And if you go and watch the global health videos, they're global health videos, and look at the ones for mothers, they've got a beautiful one, the first hours, feeding in the first hours, and it shows these babies, about 3 babies they follow, feeding, and then as mum and baby both fall asleep eventually because they're both tired. And they're lovely. And with regard to how long you should be doing skin to skin, we would be saying at least an hour until after the first feed, for as long as you want. So try and get that first feed in before you stop doing skin to skin. It's so important. It's a priming feed. We've talked about babies feeding from a bottle. The first thing that we ideally have in that baby's mouth is your breast, because babies are not born with any preconceived ideas of how they're going to feed. If they get a breast in their mouth, that's what they expect from then on. So, and it's your breast, regardless of what you're like. So we all vary tremendously. So it's whatever your makeup is. So having that baby skin to skin, letting that baby have its first feed, and then use that as your cue if you want to then not stop skin to skin. Some people don't. You can be transferred up onto the ward, still skin to skin, and have a shower later. You don't have to stop skin to skin. You can keep it going as long as you want. But what we want to do is to ensure the baby is fed before it stops being skin to skin. And that includes being lifted off to have any checks done or weights, keeping your baby close, not moving the baby, because they go through 9 steps that they go through: familiarisation, working out what they've got to do a bit of crawling. If they get interrupted on that, they go back to the beginning, and they will eventually fall asleep. And if they haven't done all of that, they may fall asleep before they're fed. So it is important to get that skin to skin. So a bit difficult to give you a length of time on that first feed. If a baby falls asleep at the breast, they often will carry on feeding. Babies often feed and sleep at the same time and do a good job. And making sure skin to skin continues until at least after the first feed. So I hope that's answered your questions. So good luck, Cheryl. Sarah has come back and said, with the colostrum, mine's leaked and it's brownish, not sure if it's blood, is this okay? Only leaking from one breast. That's absolutely fine. The colostrum can vary tremendously in colour. It can be a whole spectrum of colours, and even if there is a spot of blood in it, we don't worry at all, so don't worry. Any leaking from one, that's nothing to worry about particularly. I mean, we wouldn't be concerned about that. So I hope that's okay. Any to add on that?
No, sounds great.
I think we've had Siobhan before because I recognise her spelling of her name. Hello, Siobhan. Hoping to see you lovely ladies any time between now and Sunday. I'm the one that had all the mastitis with the first and hoping to avoid it. I remember that. It was a full bounce, I seem to remember. Well, we've got people in over the weekend. Tomorrow, yeah, we've got someone in every day. So get in touch. Let us know you're in, and someone will come and see you. All right. Good luck. Chris has come back again. Thank you again for answering my question. Thank you for the team for doing these brilliant videos. It's truly appreciated. Thank you.
We're loving it.
It is a bit weird because obviously we're only getting written feedback and we're used to teaching classes, so it is a bit different.
We're talking to a screen.
I know, it's so strange. We can see each other. Leah's come back again. Yes, she's expressing 2 to 3 times a day and getting between 1 and 3 ounces each time from both breasts combined. and compression is helping too. Thank you, very reassuring. It's that I'm doing everything I need to. Well done, Leah. So
and
keep
ring
going.
us if you're not sure. We we love to hear from you.
Yeah. Oh, we've lost you. What happened there?
We got lost the internet.
Yeah. I don't know if you can hear me. We have no screen.
So let's see if it resets itself.
Yeah. Apologies if you can't see us, because we can't see ourselves now, so I don't know if it's still going. So what if we check one of our phones? So well, the next question was Thea saying thank you. Cheryl said thank you. And Cara asked, how early can you start to hand express week-wise? We can always say 37 weeks. We're just checking, perhaps someone could message and say if you can still see us, because we can't see you. No pic. No, I can see that, Sharon. Thank you. Not sure what happened there. It's disappeared. Let me just go and see. Do you want to stay for 2 seconds?
No, we've lost. There's nothing.
There's nothing there. No, can you can't hear it either?
No.
Shall we try again?
Can you put a message on?
How can you?
Because we've been here for an hour, so say we'll be back next week.
So Raluca says she can hear us. No picture,
lovely.
but they can hear us.
Okay.
So apologies about that. So we've got a couple of questions left, so we can finish those.
A couple of them, and then we'll go, because we've been on for an hour, so we've really had a good old go today, which is fabulous.
Leah and Cheryl have both said thank you.
Thank you for all your wonderful questions. It's been fantastic.
Cara's asked how early can she start hand expressing. We'd normally suggest that you have a go at 36 to see how you get on, and actually start from 37. So don't start any earlier than that.
You might find if you go back to some of the sessions we've done, there's 5 of them now, you might find some of your answers there in the sessions that we've already done. So we've gone through quite a lot of different things in the last 5 weeks. So go back to previous sessions if you can find them, and have a little listen through to them as well, because we are repeating stuff, but there is also questions that come up that might answer your questions too.
Lexi's asked a really valid question, I have to say. Well, actually they're all valid, but this is a very, for the times that we're in. Does the skin contact need to be with mum? I'm conscious that birth partners are only allowed for the golden hour, so wouldn't want them to not get a hold of the baby. Just wondered how this works. The problem is that first hour is so important for priming the baby to learn how to breastfeed that actually it really, really does need to be with mum. And I absolutely get that that is heartbreaking, because your partner will probably have to go afterwards. But it is absolutely crucial that it is with you, because you're the one that's going to be breastfeeding, and it's your body that needs to be primed, and the baby needs to learn about you. So we do know it makes an enormous difference to a mother's breastfeeding experience and journey, and babies, if they have that first hour skin to skin. So let's hope that that baby goes on and feeds, and you both have a great time, and then your partner can have a cuddle. But unfortunately, it really is important that it's with the mummy and not the daddy at that point in time. But,
I'm going to go and ask somebody about the COVID swab.
Yeah, so we're going to try and get an answer on that one. Cheryl's come back saying still can hear us, so Sharon. Cara has asked which week is best to start hand expressing. I answered that one already. So 37 weeks pregnant is when we would be looking at it. Turn your camera round. Oh, good question. Oh, and it's just come on. What happened there? Is it just a technical error? It's a technical error. Turn your camera around, I've just been told. How do we turn it around? We're on an iPad.
Turn your camera around.
I won't be able to. They can hear us, but they're looking at the cot. So.
Oh, lovely. Well, we've had the answer about the swab. I think it's just the mums.
I don't know how to turn that camera around.
We might lose you completely if we do that, and I think we've come to a natural end. So I'm not sure why it suddenly disappeared.
No, it didn't move or anything. We didn't touch it. So I'm really, really sorry about that.
But you can enjoy the cot.
No, it looks like you may have flipped the camera. Thank you, Marie Joy. Technical. It's beyond me. Yeah. I'm so sorry. Facing out rather than at us.
If we turn it round, we won't be able to see the questions.
We can't see the questions. So, and I can't. It's an iPad that we borrow. So yeah. I think we're going to say, everyone else has said thank you. So sorry you've got a lovely view of the cot. In fact, let's just turn it around so you can see us. So we'll say goodbye. I don't know how much you can see. Sorry. Sorry about that, and get back in touch next week. Apologies. Bye.